we start with a question?
Sure. Good idea.
So last week we were talking, and I had asked you about we were talking about finding a teacher, obviously, and I had said something about finding a teacher more specifically, and you said maybe that's not your karma. And so
That sounds pretty harsh, huh? Did I say that?
At first I thought that sounds pretty harsh, but then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? My whole life I've never found a teacher.
Uh-huh. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that.
Yeah. I found lots of people who I can learn a little bit from, but nobody who I think this is the person I want to apprentice myself to.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry if I said it so harsh. I didn't mean it.
No.
But it is true. I mean, okay. So what's the question? Is it a question or a statement?
Well, no. So the question is, and obviously this is going to be a little bit contrary to the theme of the course.
Right.
Is what happens, do I absolutely have to have a teacher? And what happens if I don't have a teacher? And I just jump from video to video and class to class.
Right. So this is a good question, because I feel that every class that I'm teaching on this topic, I'm actually speaking pretty much to that concern that people have, because so in the earlier classes we did talk about okay, so fundamentally, because we are not really convinced of certain principles that the Buddhism teaches and the Buddhism insists are core principles, the truth of suffering, for one thing. The existence of an enlightened being, or enlightened mind, I should say, is another thing. We study these things intellectually, and that's good, and we might even contemplate them, but we don't have conviction around them yet. I mean, we might or might not, or maybe we've developed it, but in the beginning, it's hard to have conviction. So the other one that's really key, in becoming a Buddhist thinker, right, or having a Buddhist perspective. So Buddhist, as we remember, for people who maybe are new, we're not talking about the Buddhist religion. We're talking about a spiritual path. Right. So in terms of the spiritual path, we start fundamentally. We might not start here, but in early stages, we have to become convinced that there is such a thing as an omniscient mind. Mm-hmm. There's such a thing as the ability to attain that individually, right. Each one of us. So that's very different than any other system of thought or religion, isn't it? I mean, you in Christianity and probably in Islam, you have the idea that you can go to heaven. So that would be the goal. Whereas in Buddhism, that's not the goal, right? The goal is to develop the fully awakened mind, or the omniscient mind. And then we look at the qualities of the omniscient mind, which we talked about, I think, in the very first class, in order to become more convinced. But it takes a lot of conviction. It comes and goes for most of us as well over years, and you become more and more convinced. So conventionally speaking, then in Buddhist practice, it talks about two fundamental concepts or teachings that we have to become convinced about. One is refuge, or reliance. Maybe reliance would be a better way to say it. And so to have reliance is to have an understanding and a belief, conviction that there is an awakened mind, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no way to talk about refuge. It's not refuge really, it's Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So the awakened mind, that there's a set of practices and teachings and concepts and philosophies and psychologies that are unique in the sense that they bring us happiness, true lasting happiness. And then Sangha, that there are really beings that participate and are involved and are actually practitioners of that. Now, in terms of all three of those, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, there's relative and there's absolute. So the absolute Sangha are the Arya beings, the beings who've realized emptiness. It can be anywhere from bodhisattvas, arhants, all the way up to Buddhas, of course. So that's the Sangha, right? And then in terms of the reliance on the Buddha, there's a relative and absolute. So the idea that there is an omniscient mind, there's a Dharmakaya, a truth body. And then in terms of the Dharma, that there are these teachings, but that's not the absolute or the deeper sense of Dharma. The deeper sense of Dharma, the actual Dharma, are the realizations.
Right.
So for most of us, here we are, we have those three things, and we're just starting to get maybe more and more aligned with those, going from conceptual to experiential. If I was just conceiving of my coffee, I wouldn't get any caffeine buzz from it. I have to drink, right?
Actually, you can, because there's placebo.
Right.
30% of the benefit of coffee is placebo.
I stand corrected. So it could be like 30% of.
So I could become 30%
But it wears off.
by placebo.
I don't care. I'm still taking the 30%.
But the 70%, the
Yes.
70% I got to work at.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go. So now this is specifically about your question, which is a question that many people, I'm glad you brought it up, is the two principal ideas within being a practicing Buddhist is reliance, like I mentioned, and the belief in karma. Okay. So karma is not that complicated in one way of looking at it, because if we just think of it as mental cause and effect, for the most part, it's mental. So in your mental experience, right? In your mental experience, which includes your perceptual experience, there's no guru there, right? What we're talking about. I mean, you're
right.
You
Well,
know,
there's no direct guru. Yes.
right. So that means you're not experiencing the result, right?
That's what I'm struggling with, because I mean, can people online, if I'm listening to the Dalai Lama, if I'm listening to you, if I'm listening to Lama Tsongkhapa, if I'm reading these other books, there is a guru there, just not physically present in a physical body, but there is still Buddhist principle and Buddhist spiritualism there, and Buddhist Dharma there.
Yeah. So when you when we connect more and more with the guru, again, this was mentioned in the first class, is the best way to understand and have a relationship with your guru is to first have a relationship and a belief and a reliance, not first, but is to have a reliance or a belief in Buddha. Mm-hmm. Now, Buddha, whether Shakyamuni Buddha or any other countless Buddhas, they all make the same vow. It's not a verbal vow, but it's a natural commitment to working for the benefit of sentient beings.
Right.
Bestowing kindness. So if we go to sort of a basic level, we could say, hey, what's going on? Buddha's not showing me any kindness, right? Could say like that, because he's not. So when you rely and you really think, I'm serious, in your meditation, not just think, but actually direct your mind towards the omniscient mind, that due to the fact that he or she is bound by kindness, bound by bodhicitta, he will help you. He will teach you. Right. He will, right? Yeah. So then why is it not happening then? You know what I mean? You think, why is it not happening in the sense of a physical presence of a teacher, right? That's what we're talking about, because it's, develop, like there's someone, a friend of yours has a strong, close relationship. They feel very very dedicated and convinced that they're about their guru disciple relationship. Right. Yeah. And we don't, and maybe you're saying you don't have that. Well, that's just cause and effect, right? So you don't have that cause isn't manifested for you as an effect, right? Right. But it can be, but here's the thing. I mean, this is very important. You can and will generate that cause. You may have already, or you may not have, right? You may have already and it's not manifesting, because other karmas are strongly manifesting, such as the one that, takes over our political landscape, and we're focusing on that, and it's very hard to see that's manifesting.
Right.
Not the Dharma one's not manifesting, the guru's not manifesting. So I tell people, because I realize it's a very sort of a lonely place to be, because you're committing to this path, and yet you don't have that close personal connection or spiritual connection with a spiritual friend like that. Now, the Buddha, because his commitment is to guide us and be kindness, he is manifesting. Excuse me when I say he, because it's just a generic. He is manifesting through your videos and through your, the teachers you meet. But what I would say is to keep a sense of devotion. So the cause for meeting a spiritual teacher is it takes a lot, endless millions of good karma, merit. Because we think about the spiritual, qualified spiritual teachers today, they're not that many.
Right. Exactly.
And yet they have students, right? And by the way, we can't judge who is a disciple. Some heart disciples of a lama might see that lama 2 or 3 times in their lifetime. We can't say the one even Lama Yeshe used to say often. Don't judge the students around me as being my close disciples just because they're nearby me. Okay.
Right.
So if you keep your mind open and you keep your, not you, when I say you, it's to the audience as well. If you keep your mind, number 1, keeping the mind open. Number 2, sending out sincere requests. And number 3, he's there anyway, but something's closed. Something's closed in our mind, something's blocking. So then it's about purification and creating the merit. The way we create the merit, which I was going to talk at the end of this talk, we'll just talk about now, is by practicing. The way to create the merit is by practicing your practice. In other words, sincerely keeping your vows, or commitments, sincerely doing the practices that will generate that relationship. Having a sense of devotion. So unfortunately, that devotion word is a bit weighted in our culture, right?
Right.
But we have to keep the sense of devotion, and then what you do is choose someone that you feel probably does have the qualities. You have no doubt, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, and for me, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and just choose them as your object that you're directing your petitions toward.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've seen many, my 45 years being around Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I've seen many, many students who are very, very inspired by them, maybe even are around them for a year or 2, but don't end up with them as their root teachers. It's almost like by relying on that, I believe, they will help you create the cause to develop a connection. All of a sudden, someone's coming through your city, and you just happen to go to that talk, and that magneticism happens. Okay.
Right.
So there's no doubt you will find that teacher. What our question is when. Okay. Okay, Denise, I think you need to mute. So keeping confident. So so the main point of my talk, this comment to your question, which again we need to spend time on it, because it is why we're teaching the class, really, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. So remember that fundamentally it's because the cause hasn't manifested yet. How do you get the cause to manifest? Do your practices as best you can, stay committed, and direct your mind and petitions toward a holy being, whether it's a deity or it can be a deity too.
Okay.
If you have a strong connection with a deity or a strong connection with a teacher. And then if you don't feel a strong connection, but you have sort of confidence, like you have confidence in Lama Zopa, you have confidence in Lama Yeshe, or you have confidence in His Holiness, or you have confidence in any of the great, other traditions, spiritual teachers, direct your petitions towards them, offer your practice to them. Because
Okay.
that's the cause for finding the teacher. Offering your practice, doing good practice, or when I say good, the best you can, and offering it. Okay? It will happen. I promise you it will happen, but it can take a really circuitous route. Yeah, I have no doubt. And I know many people, they've had one or two interactions with someone, with one of those beings, and it changed their life. And they, even yogis, you hear old stories that they meet, like the Dalai Lama, they meet him once and they go off and do retreat for the rest of their life, with His Holiness as their refuge object. So and then I'm glad you brought this up, because I think it dovetails all the topics we're talking about. So when this teacher, so this is what we want to do, is when we talked last time about the qualities of the teacher, did we talk about all the qualities? I'm not sure. Anyone remember?
Talked about some of them. I don't know if we got to all of them.
Okay, we'll get back to it. So well, there's two things I want to say about this. One is, if you have sense of confidence that's stronger than your doubt, let's say, and it's not just because they're popular. So with Islam, someone that you feel sort of a magnetic connection, it just happens. I mean, it might not be a popular teacher. It might be someone else. And that happens. Now, then you can direct your petitions towards that person, even though you may not have that relation of guru disciple in the sense of we're talking about. That doesn't matter, because you're seeing them as a Buddha, right? And from their side, they have the qualities. So you don't want to direct that towards someone you're not sure really has the qualities, or that you don't see has. Now, that's one thing. Second thing is, Meron talked at the very beginning, when you see the Buddha is your guru, then when different teachers manifest for you, they might even be teaching, you're taking a Lam Rim class or something like that, then you will have the experience that your guru is teaching you. Now, it doesn't mean the same thing that person necessarily is your guru, but your guru is manifesting through that person. And that's the way to protect yourself, because too many people say, oh, I have to see him as, oh, that's my guru. And then they end up doing questionable activities, right? And then the poor students get, this is a terrible, karmically terrible thing to happen. That happens also due to the student's karma, of course, as well, not just the teacher. So the way to avoid that is say, my guru, my Buddha is my guru. And then hopefully you will also develop a connection with a spiritual being who has those qualities. But until that time, you stay convinced that you're keeping your mind fixed on your deity or the Buddha, the omniscient mind, and you really strongly make the request that I'm going to this teaching today, and teach me, through this person. That protects you, and it protects the other person too. So I think that's it. I think that's is there something? No, is there something else that's not clear in that?
No, that was great. And when you said that last week, I didn't take it as an offense. One of the reasons I like you, to me, you're like Venerable Verbena. When you see something, you just say, look, we could beat around the bush about this or call it something else, but let's just call it what it is. And that's exactly how I took it. So that was great, because it allowed me to really, rather than try to think about the words and what did the words mean, the words are very clear. So
good.
Now I get to take what are those words? Where are those words? What do I need to do to move that thing forward?
Right. Thank you. Yeah, it all comes down to, it's interesting. It all comes down to, there is an element of faith here, right? There is an element of faith, but it's faith with discrimination, not blind faith. And it's like trust. It's like, okay, the salesman told me that, the AI in my Tesla is going to work, but I'm feeling a little weird about that, right? Self-driving, it's going to self-drive. Okay, I have some, you're right. So you have some faith, but you don't just like jump in the car and put in the address and take off, right? You're going to develop a sense of trust in that it really works. So that's what we do, the same thing with this. And so thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Denise, how are you? I lost her.
Hi, Karuna.
Any questions? We just had a really long question.
Do you have a quick summary from last time?
I don't. You're gonna have to download it. Well, we're gonna go maybe I do.
I will.
Let's go into the presentation. I need to, thanks. I need the share screen.
Mr. Smith is with us tonight too.
Mr. Who? Who?
Smith.
You can share.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so Shayla or somebody help me where we were last time.
My
So
notes.
we didn't have class last week, by the way, for
Yes.
those.
My
You remember
notes-
where? Yeah.
My notes say we started talking about the 10 qualities, but I
Okay.
don't know where we got to, or,
Okay.
yeah, I don't remember that. So maybe that's
Oh,
exactly
okay.
where we got to.
Okay, good. So this is our last class in this series, and we, because I guess I talked too much or something, but we didn't get very far. But I don't mind that, as long as it's useful what we have covered. So in the traditional class, of course, we're going more traditional through the outlines and all that stuff. That's not, I don't find that always so helpful, but it is helpful for us students to have that outline, right? I mean, at some point, we do need the academic presentation. It's like, if we're going to become a lawyer, we do have to go through some of those case studies and the laws and memorize those things. So this has great value, but it has a lot of value when it's in the right context. So, okay. Now I see, we talked about this, right? So, Denise, this is where we were talking about why guru devotion is important. And we went right to Shayla and Michael that we went through this, and I started right. Everyone's clear. We went through this. Yeah. Okay. So about
Love that
Lam,
picture.
yeah. Well, Lam Yeshe described about the need for an organic, living kind of force to come in touch with our heart. That is the guru. Okay. So that's where we're at. That's what we were talking about for the last 10, 15 minutes. Okay. So it's about that. Now we have to be careful too, because we're kind of needy. We experience some organic living kind of force that comes in touch with our heart, and we think, that's the guru, right? But this is the naivety of us Westerners, because we don't have a long history, tradition of guru disciple relationship. So this will happen, and then people say, I found my guru. And I just want to put up a warning. That's naive, okay? That's naive, because what we had to do at that point, you should not just give in. Remember, so at that point, it still does not eliminate the 12 years of analysis of your guru. Now, 12 years is going to be a figurative number. Okay. But Lam Yeshe said, I don't want a bunch of mushroom students. Okay. All of a sudden you open one day you go in the basement, there's dark basement, there's nothing there. Next day you go in, there's a bunch of mushrooms. Okay. He didn't like that. He didn't like that. He thought that was pretty dangerous. And he thought Westerners were very susceptible to that. Okay. So just having an organic But at the same time, due to your previous karma, you meet one being, and it just explodes. It's just like there's just no doubt. So that can happen too. Okay, that can happen too, or it can take time. When I met Lama Yeshe, it was like that. But I had also been in a spiritual practice for 3 or 4 years, and but there was some kind of relationship between Lama and myself. It wasn't just me. He was presenting himself also to me. And so, like an introduction, kind of like when you go out on a date. You want to be suspicious about, but you might feel a connection right away, right? That's good. So guru devotion in our tradition is important because that person becomes the most powerful person in our life. This we did last week, so I'm just going to read this. The Dharma connection comes from receiving teachings as a disciple guru. When we receive teachings, so this is something we we're just talking about. When you receive teachings and you feel you're receiving teachings from the guru, it has a 100,000 times more powerful effect than what we talked about earlier as receiving teachings from a Dharma teacher or from a professor, from a preceptor. Those are all valid. But when you feel the guru, then it's more like everything that they're teaching becomes alive in your mind, So the quality of our guru devotions depending on our merit, okay? And religion has degenerated because of the rarity of meeting highly realized beings. Again, what we're talking about a few minutes ago, right? That there aren't that many. There are less possibilities of becoming familiar with a highly realized being. And I think because we know there's the need for that, we know the value of that, we do project that onto people who maybe are not highly realized, but are knowledgeable. Or again, I just really onto this thing about caution. I really think caution with respect. Okay, caution with respect. So we need an example of someone who has developed beyond what we think is possible. That is so powerful, right? It's just that alone is inspirational. That alone helps us to practice. That alone gets us to our cushion the next day. You even just think, when you're feeling hopeless or just, or discouraged, and you think of that being, it changes our mood automatically, doesn't it? It gives you a little bit of vigor, to kind of, okay, I'll try again. I'll try this meditation again, right? And we see the great qualities. We see these great qualities in them. It gives us faith that we can have the same attainment, and that's the idea between the guru-disciple relationship. Is it's only a role model, and you want to attain what that person has, then that's the proper role model. Okay. Again, one of the things I had stated, I was in another tradition, another religion before becoming Buddhist. And one of the things that became so powerful for me when I became Buddhist is it seemed the higher the teacher realizations of the teacher, the more they denied those realizations, the more they hid those realizations, the more the no way. And I get this Western, this American thing that happens where there's sort of a subtle boasting that happens. And that's because we do it in our culture. Like if you're a CEO or a trainer or a inspirational speaker, it's kind of like you're just considered weird if you don't talk about your qualities, right? That's how you convince people. But I found in this tradition, Tibetan Buddhist or the Buddhist tradition, is the opposite. And that's because they would be role models, would speak to their qualities. Okay. So I think we have to trust ourselves. I think we have to trust ourselves and our feelings. Okay. Okay. Why is it important? Again, when we talk about guru devotion, when we're talking about it here in this class, we're talking about it as sort of from the Mahayana Buddhist perspective, and in many ways, particularly from the Mahayana Tantric perspective. There is no practice in Tantra that can be achieved without a guru-disciple relationship. I mean, you might only have to see the guru once, but it is the core of deity practice. It is the core of tantra practice. And that relationship is essential. Okay. So there it is, what I was talking about before, that third bullet point. To save us from the lower realms, they must have an understanding of refuge and karma.
Luna,
Yeah,
is this kind of like we pick a role model because they exemplify something we wish we could be better at, and so if we don't have somebody like that in mind as our teacher, then how can we become better like that, right? Is it that
Correct.
simple?
correct. It's that simple. But there's one caveat to that, is if you want to become the most successful real estate agent, then your role model will be, your mentor will be someone who you would like to become real estate agent like, right?
Yeah.
So we have to start back at the foundation of the Buddhist practice, Buddhist path, which is our goal is enlightenment. Okay, so if we want to be famous and well respected, then we will choose a spiritual teacher that may be famous and has a lot of respect, a lot of student, whatever, right? Because that's an error on our part from not being clear at the beginning what our goal is. Our goal is enlightenment. Our goal is to help all living beings. Our goal is not to become famous. Our goal is not to have a great reputation. Our goal is not to have 30 centers under our name. Our goal, right? This is so hard for us Westerners, because our whole life we're trained almost to judge our achievements as success of life.
Mhm.
And I don't personally, I know, it's like, we know there's yogis that disappear into the mountains forever or for years going to retreat. No one knows who the heck they are, right?
Mhm.
And yet they're developing, but they're, because of their intention is to become like the Dalai Lama, right? Not like Donald Trump or Brad Pitt, who I like, by the way. I'm not criticizing him. The goal, if your goal is to be famous, then have a famous role model. So there's many, many highly realized or great practitioners whose gurus are very unassuming, maybe not even famous. Okay. Now
Can I
let's
ask
look
a
at,
quick question?
yeah. Yes.
Does a yogi that goes up into the, I mean, you never know, but does a yogi that goes up into the caves and you never really see them again, is that because they are not attached to this life?
Correct.
Oh.
It's because they're only attached, I'm going to use that word, they're only attached to helping all sentient beings as quickly as possible. So one life is just a few years, right? So if they're focused on that, excuse me, if they're focused on that and that's the quickest way to help, because sentient beings around us are just constantly diving into the lower realms for eons on eons and eons. So so the trick is to quickly get to attain some level of attainment where you can help them. So if you don't have that, what good is it to stay just in the world and try to give people food or something? That doesn't keep them from experiencing long-term suffering. Not that giving food is bad. It's not judging that that's bad, but for the spiritual practitioner, they're so impatient. They can't stand. They're watching all these beings just being consumed and disappearing in the lower realms forever. Which seems like forever, not forever. But.
Right.
So going into the mountains for 3, 5, 30 years is no big deal. It's such a short time. One life. Okay. So so the classical teachings, and we did start this, I believe, last week. Does anyone remember, Shayla? Excuse me.
I think my notes just say 10 qualities of a guru.
Okay. So classical teachings on advantage to devoting the guru we talked about it. You'll become closer to Buddhahood. This is what we want, right? It pleases the victorious ones. Did we cover this? Anybody remember? No. Okay, so so this is obviously for the person who's pretty committed to this path. Otherwise, what difference does it make to someone that you will become closer to Buddhahood? That's what our goal is. So in the classical, on the advantage of devoting to the guru, if we devote ourselves to a qualified teacher, or in our minds devote ourselves, right? Excuse me one more time. That the speed of attaining that Buddhahood is phenomenal. I mean, it's immeasurably quicker. We have immeasurably quicker. And I know many people say, like we were talking earlier, oh, well, I read things online, I read books, and I look at videos online. The problem with that is there's no organization to it. The relationship with the guru. Okay, so when I was with Lama Yeshe, I was early days, I found meditation fairly not that hard. And it was familiar. I found studying these concepts and these teachings as something really enriching. I learned Nepalese language, which is not a Dharma language. I learned it quickly because I was in a program. So then I started studying Tibetan. I lived in a monastery with, a bunch of monks. So I thought maybe, I would like to become like a translator. Maybe I'll become a monk, do lots of study and retreats. So only because of his wisdom, he had me not do any of those things. Each and every one of them, he took away from me. He told me directly, I don't want you to become a translator. So he stopped that. He said, one time I was doing some letters with him to a couple of Western students who wanted to become ordained, and he had some advice for them. They were having problems getting their parents' permission. Then he turned to me and said, I hope you don't ever become a monk. That's very unusual for a monk to say, because they're supposed to encourage you to. So he didn't want to be a translator, he didn't want to be a monk. And then he would attend teachings in Dharamsala with His Holiness, and my wife would go there as well. But every time I tried to go, he said, no, you stay here and work. You work. And I said, well, and I'd say, I want to go to these teachings. Oh, you've done so many teachings. You've done so many retreats. I actually hadn't done that many by that point. So the point is, there's no way I would have made those decisions on my own, right? But the guru will do what's best for you in terms of the quickest thing for your enlightenment. So I do have confidence that he was doing what's quickest for my enlightenment. There's no way I would ever made those decisions on my own. I would have made the opposite decisions. And that makes sense. I'm not enlightened, so how would I know what's best for me? I mean, you can check in with your wisdom. He always would ask people, check your wisdom to know what's best. But we tend to trick ourselves, right? We tend to trick ourselves that this course or that teacher would be the best thing for us. But we don't have enlightenment in mind. Typically, we want to feel better, so, or we want to feel more knowledgeable. Okay. So when we devote ourselves to Guru, a strong sense of devotion, we will get that kind of guidance. Without that strong sense of devotion, we might just get the guidance that we were looking for, like go do this retreat or go study that. So it's difficult with real Guru devotion. The ideas, Chogyam Trungpa used to say, the purpose of the Guru is to insult you. And my relationship with Lama Yeshe was very insulting. He insulted me all the time. I often tell people in 9 years, he gave me one compliment, one that I can remember. It's just, it's not about feeling good. It's not about impressing him. It's not about he's my friend. It's not about I have a close relationship. Look, everybody, how I do. Moment you think that, he'll pull the rug out from underneath you and humiliate you in front of people. You know, he humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. It was really hard. But but when I think of him, it brings tears to my eyes, the kindness. Because he's so kind. He's the only one that was so kind that he would do the direct thing to keep me out of the lower realms. Right? Otherwise, like once there was a retreat in Land of Medicine Buddha in Santa Cruz, and it was Vajrasattva retreat. It was quite a long one, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche was leading it, and there was one elderly Chinese I don't know, Chinese American gentleman and his family who were attending the retreat, and this gentleman was, I think he was like in his 80s, okay, pretty frail. And so he was going to every session, which was like, 10, 12 hours a day. And he had kind of like wasn't really eating anything, not eating very, very little, and not sleeping much, kind of extending himself. And so the family became quite worried about him. And they called me and asked me if I could intervene and talk to him. So we had a family meeting. And I told him, I said, it's not necessary to attend every single session and teaching. You have to look after your health, as well. And he listened. I think in my memory, it had no effect, right? And then a day or two later, I got a note from Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and he said, how do you know that by him taking more care is what's going to enlighten him quickest? In other words, Rinpoche didn't like my advice. Rinpoche was saying, even if he dies in this retreat because of exhaustion and overextension, that's a much better result. I'm extrapolating, by the way. That's a much better result than him having missed some teachings just to take care of his health. Interesting. See, the perspective changes because Rinpoche's only like us. If we're only focused on Buddhahood, what difference does it make if we don't get, if we don't get soy milk in our latte and they actually put in oat milk? What difference does it make? Of course, I can't speak that way because I would really care. Like oat milk over soy milk or whatever, So, but I think I have seen, the demonstration of these practitioners that show you who cares, because you're focused on, if you're going to Disneyland and you got to drive through Anaheim, which is kind of a pit, who cares, right? Who cares? You're going to Disneyland. Okay. So the Guru devotion is the lifeblood of the tantric path. And in that context, so if we don't care about attaining enlightenment quickly, then there's not as much need to have a strong guru-disciple relationship. You can take your time and develop it over countless lifetimes, but you still need that relationship. And attaining the Dharmakaya is based on your relationship with the Guru. This is a very Mahayanist, very tantric point of view of the Guru-disciple relationship. Okay. So, and by the way, the way we devote ourselves to our teacher is through making offerings and serving her or him. Okay. People often wonder, well, we have a commitment from our side. It's not just them teaching us. Our commitment is to practice. Our commitment is to try and serve. Our commitment is to be nice to sentient beings. Our commitment is to improve our relationships with our partners. Our commitment is to make a peaceful, more better world. And you keep the Guru in your mind, then it becomes all offerings to him. And this is what we're talking about earlier. That creates the merit to have a strong Guru-disciple relationship. because you're saying, I want to help sentient beings and I don't know how. Then of course, then the Buddha thinks, I've got one, right? There's a ripe one. So the other thing that pleases the victorious ones, they want to teach us, but they can't reach us. So they do it through the guru. So make your request to the Buddhas, the victorious ones. And the guru will manifest, I promise. No matter how many offerings we make to the Buddhas without relying properly on the guru, it does not please the Buddhas, okay? So there's often stories Lama Zopa tells about if you go through as many universes as there are sands, grains of sands in the Ganga, in all those universes, you have universes of countless Buddhas, and you make offerings to each and every one of them. The merit you create by making one offering of a cup of tea to your own guru far surpasses that. Interesting. Because we make all those offerings to all those Buddhas, but they can't reach us because we don't have the karmic connection. We don't have we have to actually have attained the first bodhisattva bhumi, which is direct realization of emptiness, in order to receive teachings from them directly. Okay, so these are 10, these are back here, the 10 advantages, I think. So we will not be disturbed by demons or bad company. And I know demons is one of those, spirits, but we don't know, a lot of mental health issues, according to the Tibetan Buddhist medicine and according to Buddhist medicine and Buddhist philosophy, a lot of our issues, mental health issues, are actually the influence of outside forces. It can be through just, other sentient beings, spirits, nagas, that kind of thing. We don't know, right? But you're automatically under the protection of the guru, because who has perceptions of these things. Then it's almost like you're wearing this armor. Okay, and then eventually you automatically stop all the delusions and misdeeds. It's kind of annoying in one way, you could say, when we become more and more attuned with the guru, who is omniscient, right? That omniscient mind, or at least a highly realized mind that's clairvoyant and present, right? It's not like what we think of the world. They see things very differently, much more broadly, and much more universally, and they can see things that we can't see. They can read our minds. They can be aware of our comings and goings. And so, what happens is when you're aware of that relationship, it just does not seem organic, appropriate, helpful to perform non-virtuous actions. So it's not, and I want to make something really clear, it's not the guilt like the Christian guilt thing. Okay, you'll go to hell. It's not that. It's this resonance that happens. It's like if you're standing next to the Dalai Lama, if you're standing or close to him, okay, and you get angry at someone around you and yell at them, I mean, it's just no doubt you probably won't even do that. Maybe, because you'll feel like, oh God, I can't, that doesn't feel right, right? So it's not their judgment that gets you to not do that, or to take the last, you're standing there and there's the Dalai Lama and there's you and there's one last piece of cheesecake and he's standing there and you're standing there. If someone's standing there who you don't really like, or who's kind of an angry person, you have no problem taking it, right? But when it's the holy, someone whose presence is so pure, it's automatically you think, I want to offer this to the Dalai Lama, isn't it? Or I want to offer this to my grandmother, who's always taking care of me. She always does care about me. In fact, she'll say, no, you take it. No, you take it, honey. Like that, right? So you feel something very natural to not be greedy in those, or not be angry, or not performing these misdeeds, right, that we're talking about. Okay, if you have the Solar Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, if you're driving him to the airport, right, or driving him somewhere, because of the power of their presence, most likely, unless you're a particular kind of person, but not us, who are devoted to this practice, you're not going to start cutting people off, are you? You're not going to start flipping people off. You're not going to start tailgating people. Do you follow what I mean? I hope people follow this, because it's the power of so when we have a relationship with the guru, and he or she is becoming more and more present in our consciousness, then that presence is as if they're standing next to you. And so it automatically controls your behavior. Okay. So the other thing is your insights and realizations, levels and the paths will increase. That's no doubt. And to develop to the point where your guru's presence is felt constantly, then your realizations develop constantly. And how do you get to that place? You get to that place by starting at the beginning, by feeling respect for a particular teacher. He might be the right one. And then you maybe feel a sense of service to that person, or you want to make them lunch, or when they're teaching, you sit with a sense of devotion in your mind because you want to subdue your own mind. All those things create the merit of, setting up the meditation or the teaching room, or picking him up at the airport, or making those kinds of offerings, bringing him or her some cookies you made. You're not attached. They may hate the cookies. They may not like chocolate chip. That doesn't matter. You see, it doesn't matter to them either, if they're a proper teacher. And then you create the karma. So we know karma has four qualities, 4 results, and one of the results is how if by generating a sense of guru devotion, guru respect, guru reliance, then in the future you will have qualified virtuous guides in your future rebirths. Okay, and the 7th one here is not falling into the lower realms. We will be protected, even if we're not good practitioners. This is something that's very relevant to me somehow in my thinking these days, is I'm thinking about death a lot. Maybe it's my age, maybe it's my level. I'm finally developing a sense of appreciation for death and dying, impermanence, and when we really see ourselves dying or others dying around, it becomes a little terrifying, because you think, whoa, well, I won't swear, but you think, holy heck, where am I going to go? Wait a minute, I'm not guaranteed, right? Because I haven't developed the realizations that allow me to meditate on the clear light at the time of death. That's a guarantee, right? That's what, you won't take a lower rebirth then. It might attain enlightenment, in fact, in the bardo or in the time of death. But if you don't have that strength of practice, and that means, one way to judge is if when you're in a state of kind of like difficulty, panic, whatever, crisis, and you're not able to meditate, not much prospect of doing that when you're dying, because everything is collapsing then. Everything's going to chaos, at least for a while. So if we can't meditate when we're falling asleep at night, and watch the dream process as an observer, and falling asleep as an observer, meditating with a mindfulness and awareness, if we can't do it then, I'm not sure it doesn't seem like we'd be able to do it at the time of death. Much stronger experience. So, but if you have a spiritual guide, or someone like we were talking about earlier in this hour, about relying on someone that you have some confidence, like the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Lama Yeshe, these other great teachers, some sense of confidence, but doubt might be still there, some sense of confidence then if you develop that in this life, in your meditation practice and in your contemplation and thinking about things, then you won't feel fear at the time of death, because you can, I can rely on that. I can do that. I can rely on the Dalai Lama, even though, I really believe he's Chenrezig. I might not have that magnetic connection with him, but that doesn't matter, because he's Chenrezig. He sees everything, and I can rely on that. Okay. Or some other holy being. So then we will not fall in the lower realms, even though we don't have that control. The other one that just as a footnote, one of my gurus, Rupa Rinpoche, said he said this to me directly. I can't remember, a small group. I can't remember the context. I think it was, I was talking to him directly, and he said it's a huge thing to meditate on what we'll call the 3 kayas at the time of death. That's a tantric practice. He said, but if you just meditate on bodhicitta, you will be reborn in the pure realms. But to meditate on bodhicitta at time of death means meditating on bodhicitta when they're denying your renewal of your license, and you get up to the window and they tell you that's closed. You got to come back next week. If I can't meditate on bodhicitta, then how am I going to do it at the time of death? It takes some practice. Or when you go to your favorite restaurant and you just can't seem to get the service that they always give you, or you can't get any service at all. I'm in Australia still, and I'm leaving next week. There's a restaurant not too far from here that my relatives go to frequently. They're known there. So one night, my sister-in-law and her husband were out for dinner. So my wife and I and our kids, we went to this restaurant. We really like it. I think it was a Sunday night or something. Yeah, so the regular staff wasn't there, and the server got every single thing wrong. Every single thing. I mean, even to the point where she brought water glasses, and there were 5 of us, and she only brought 4. So I asked for a water glass, and she never brought it. The point where, they had these great French fries, and she brings the French fries, but then no ketchup. And so you ask for ketchup, but then she forgets the ketchup. Then the French fries are cold. So then when we were ordering the dinner, she didn't know the menu, but she was the sweetest. She was so sweet. But the thing is, did I meditate on bodhicitta then? Did I? Anyone want to ask me? Denise, you want to ask me? I didn't. I didn't. But I did get to the place where I thought she was so sweet that we just started enjoying her way of her system, which was just a different system. So yeah. So okay. So then from the Sutrayana point of view, the guru should have 10 qualities. And these are even more important in Tantra, okay? So the 10 qualities are, the first 3 of these 10 are, your teacher should practice ethics, in terms of the higher training ethics, okay? Whether they're a monk or a nun, then traditionally, you would expect the traditions meant, ethics in terms of practicing the Vinaya of being a monk or nun, or living in the lay precepts. And then our teacher should have training in meditative stabilization or calm abiding. Third one is have higher training in wisdom of emptiness. Right. Then the higher training in ethics means, you have to have confidence that your teacher is disciplined, tamed in body and mind. It doesn't mean being dynamic, like Robina. She's very dynamic. She's very, Lama Yeshe was too, very dynamic. So when I first was writing The Misleading Mind, the book I published some years ago, my agent wasn't Buddhist, And he messed up something really bad. I can't remember what. When I say really bad, I mean, in terms of the context of. And so I said to him something like, "Oh, come on, you got to get it together," something like that. I don't remember what I said, but it's like that, kind of a little bit impatient. And he said, "God, I thought you were Buddhist." Like they have this, this idea like, I just need to find my Zen. That's kind of a common, right? People say that all the time. And like I play golf and I get upset with something. My friend, these guys are not, "Oh, geez, man, I thought you were Buddhist." So obviously I'm not trained in higher ethics, I guess. But the point is, you can't judge merely from that, but they should be a role model, right? Should be a role model for you. So meaning having self-control, and typically these are the traditional. So I want to give you the traditional qualifications so that you have no doubt that when you see, maybe you do come across someone that acts really unethically, and you might just excuse it, but then know in fact that yes, ethical behavior is one of the qualities of that a teacher needs to possess. Okay. One reason is people won't trust you, right? If you're out of control, people won't trust you. We need to walk the talk. And you're instructing from one's experience. And also the student doesn't get confused. These are very important, as we know that there are students these days seem to be led astray by teachers who don't seem to have a strong basis in ethics. Okay. So you really want to examine the teacher to make sure that he or she you're confident in their practice of ethics. Doesn't mean perfect, but it means not hiding their shortcomings, for example. Okay. You should be very careful if the teacher's own mental training, his or her behavior, or explanations are too far off the standard. This is, again, very important. We somehow we have this understanding, or we've heard about crazy yogis, right? And they act so unconventionally. We're not ready for crazy. If you're a tantric practitioner, okay. But if you're not a tantric practitioner, then better to be suspicious. Because crazy yogis, I think Lama Yeshe sometimes, I think all the great practitioners have a craziness to them, or an unpredictability to them. That goes without saying. Otherwise, they'd just be Buddhist professors, or that's not definitely they need to sometimes take harsh actions, or harsh actions, or words and things like that. But you do have to be somewhat discriminating. If it's too off the standard, it's good to be suspicious then. And the way off the standard are people like Milarepa and these great yogis. But those great yogis, we hear about their off the standards from their disciples. It's not that they're necessarily demonstrating that in the world at large to all their students. Okay, I just want to say that. It's usually something personal between you and your teacher. So the horse of the mind is difficult to steer and always tries to run away. These Pratyamoksha vows are the bridle, properly fitting tightly together. So we want to start, without the confusion. We want to start with a teacher, pretty convinced their behavior is stable like that. Okay. Meditative stabilization. Then again, these are the qualities of a fully qualified teacher. He or she has developed serenity, a mental peace, samadhi. So samadhi, this teacher would be able to stay on an object for as long as he or she wishes. Has developed a joyful and comfortable physical experience, which comes from attaining the 9 stages of calm abiding. Usually they've given up on that sense of out of control, or going to sleep during meditation, or acting out of ignorance. Okay. Then meditative stabilization, again, is through employing the mental factors of recollection. So when we develop, people talk about mindfulness, but really in terms of Buddhist Mindfulness is just a one part of the piece of developing mental stabilization. We're talking here about developing full calm abiding or samadhi. Okay, and these are developed through the mental factors of recollection and and introspective awareness. And this is not a class on developing calm abiding, but I wanted to put that in here because there's a lot of teachers out there developing mindfulness. And that mindfulness that I look at, not all of them by any means, but much of what's happening in the general population is not developing calm abiding. One of my colleagues has looked at some of these programs and found that of the 9 stages of developing calm abiding, the tradition, what seems to be in commonly taught today will help you to attain maybe the 4th level of calm abiding and not beyond. Okay, which is nice. I mean, calm, that would be good. But that's not what we're talking about in terms of a spiritual guide. The perfect spiritual guide we're talking about here, okay? So within wisdom is the 3rd one, thoroughly pacified. Insight in the nature of reality. Understanding and analyzing the ultimate nature of phenomena. And because of the second quality of calm abiding or single pointed concentration, single concentration and this view of emptiness or reality are joined together, and that produces a special analytical wisdom without the loss of meditative stability. And this is technical, but I want to get this out there because I feel this, at least we can do cover some of this stuff and have I've taken care of my job. Okay, so that's what the 3rd quality of a qualified teacher. The 4th quality are the inner qualities of the teacher. So inner qualities and level of knowledge must be superior to the students. Okay, you will be, or we will be influenced, and our own qualities will be elevated because their qualities are higher than ours. If they have less experience and less knowledge and less wisdom, you are likely actually to degenerate. Now pay attention to that, because we may think that they have greater wisdom than us, and yet what they're teaching as wisdom may be completely wrong. Or what they're teaching as mindfulness may be very low. And you, because of your sense of humility, and also lack of education, you follow it. But then what happens is you become less subdued, less advanced. If they're the same level of realizations, they probably can't help you much either. Okay? We're talking about qualified gurus, qualified spiritual friends. They should be learned. So that means wealthy in scriptures, Yes, it does mean qualified or learned in the text. Not just, I see other teachers, maybe like myself, they just make it up. Or they take a little piece and then they extrapolate and they may write a whole book. Okay. But they really haven't studied much. And we feel that study is, I still see Lama Zopa Rinpoche. I don't know if he still studies, but he's sure giving the appearance of studying. So is the Dalai Lama. If they keep doing it, what's that have to say about us and our teachers? So be very careful about that one. Okay, and they can explain the path clearly and correctly. That is the real way a teacher helps a student, is through their explanation, through their teaching. That's why sometimes we have to go academic, right? And boring. Hope this is not too boring, but it might be. Okay, in terms of explaining the spiritual path clearly, even Buddha cannot wash away our negative karma, misconduct, obstacles, suffering. They cannot give their realizations to others. They can show you reality exactly as it is. Teach the path and its goals. Oops, that should be they. They free sentient beings from misery by showing the nature. Hang on a second, because my mind's blocked. Nature of reality. Oh, from the nature of phenomena and the nature of the path. Okay, bear that in mind. So what really ultimately that you're looking for in this teachers, are they really helping us, free us from misery? How? Not just by giving hugs, not by giving just, food and good cups of coffee, but ultimately the only reason they do those things is because they want to have the opening to show us the nature of phenomena and the nature of the path. Okay. And that is what happens. So number 6, they need to understand suchness, which is the wisdom directly realizing the final nature of reality. So it's suchness or emptiness. They need to understand emptiness. Does it mean fully realized it? Not necessarily, but able to have a really good grasp of it academically, intellectually, and conceptually, and having meditated on conceptually. So they have a conceptual insight into emptiness, and ideally direct insight into emptiness, of course. If you have a conceptual insight into emptiness through meditation, you still can make mistakes in your explanation. But if you have the direct experience, which is the first level bodhisattva, the 10 bodhisattva levels, then the explanations will not most likely be flawed. Okay. But they can be teaching from different emptiness. There's 4 philosophical schools, and so a being with clear understanding of emptiness, whether it's conceptual or even the direct realization of emptiness, non-conceptual, might be teaching from one of the lower schools, lower perspectives. It depends what's most useful for the student. Should possess great diligence. They take special joy in virtuous activities and an untiring effort to help others by teaching, guiding, and training disciples. Okay. They don't get exhausted. They might have to rest for a couple hours or something. Skilled in speaking or communicating to others, not just good expressions or entertaining. So we're so used to being entertaining. We watch TV or movies, and the best movies, best TV, the best music is the most entertaining movies, right? For some of us. And the way they communicate, this is one way you can think of it, is it really sticks in your mind. You might not remember everything they said, but you have an impression of what they said. And it's like it resonates for you. There's one teacher, one very well-known teacher. I'm just expressing my own faults, not the fault of the teacher. He's very popular. But I can't listen to him because the tone of his voice, it's terrible. This is really hard for me because the tone of his voice. So anyway, just confessing to you all, it's nothing. Should have great compassion. So this again, let's analyze, when we receive teachings from others, be very cautious. Are they teaching for their reputation? Are they teaching for fame? Are they teaching for wealth or money? Okay. Are they interested in their success, being well known, successful? How many hits they have on their website? Okay. How many followers they have on Facebook? How many people are downloading their teachings? How many people are attending their teachings? Okay. The 10th one is great patience in the face of difficulties. Of course, this is tough. No matter what happens, they will maintain their determination to help others. They do what needs to be done anytime, under any conditions. Okay. Okay, so those are the 10 qualities of a qualified teacher. And what happens if you can't find all 10? Well, these are degenerate times, harder to find all 10. At least we're looking for the 5 essentials of the ethical conduct, some kind of meditative stabilization, some kind of deep appreciation, if not experience, but deep appreciation, understanding of wisdom, which includes understanding emptiness, realizing the final nature of reality. And they have a sense of great compassion. They aspire to great compassion at the very least, and they do have compassion. If a teacher is not speaking from the reality of their own experience, what they say will not penetrate the students' hearts and have the necessary effect on their mind. Isn't that true? And if a teacher has the experience, they can be talking about cheesecake and it penetrates your mind. And that is experience I have with Lama Yeshe and Lama Zohar Moshe. It's like when you remember the next day or next week or next year or 10 years later, I remember conversations that come up I had with Lama Yeshe that I didn't remember before, or they come up in new ways. And he passed away in 1984. And it just will be something he said seems so mundane. But because the power of his being, the presence, that's all that matters. They can talk, so I think I often tell the story. I hope I didn't tell it here already. You can stop me if I have, but my mother and father knew Lama Yeshe, had met him a number of times. And at one point when I was living in Nepal, I had to come back to the States for a year and a half. And so at that time, it was 1977, Lama Zohar Moshe and Lama Yeshe were teaching a course near Palm Springs in Yucca Valley. And it was a 1-month course. It was amazing. And my parents living in LA wanted to know if they could come out and visit Lama. And he said, of course, invite them to lunch. It's about a 2-hour drive. Invite them to lunch. So my brother, why does I have one brother? My older brother was at this course. It was his first contact with the lamas and with Dharma. And he was very involved in drugs at that time. He had a big drug problem. But he was attending the course. And so at the lunch, invited Lama to lunch, Lama invited them to lunch, and I came, my brother came, my parents. And, it was really difficult for me because my mom and Lamas were talking about orchids. Because my mom loved orchids, Lama loved flowers. They're talking about orchids and I think some cooking things or something. And my dad, who was a businessman, he's talking to Lama about his business and how running businesses. And then Lama's asking questions. And then they start talking about the political situation in Tibet and the Chinese. And I'm sitting there and my brother's not saying anything. And it's going on for an hour or two. And I'm getting really impatient. And I'm thinking, oh, I really blew it. What a waste of time. They're really wasting Lama's time. Something more profound should be happening here. And I'm thinking, come on, Lama, zap them. You got to zap, something, this magical thing. And then so we get to the end of the lunch and I'm really disappointed because I remember my dad asking Lama how he got all these students to volunteer for him, and that if my dad could get his workers to volunteer for him, he'd make a lot more money and be more successful. It's like, it's very friendly, you know what I mean? It was quite warming, So the lunch ends and I'm just, not comfortable. I think what a wasted, squandered opportunity. And as we're leaving, saying our goodbyes, my mother did this amazing thing. She said, Lama, you've helped Karuna so much, which is a big thing for a mom to say, right? You've helped Karuna so much. Now, please, Lama, can you help him? And she pointed over to my brother. And Lama went up to my brother and he grabbed by his beard and he pulled him close to his face. And he said, okay with you? And my brother's like, kind of, sure. He's just shaking his head. So then we left. And we're walking down the hallway. And my dad was an atheist and just a science was his religion, so to speak. We're walking down the hallway. My mom stops us. And she says, Karuna, if there's such a thing as a Buddha, he must be it. My dad turns to me and goes, yeah, he's amazing. I mean, he's a genius, which is like my father's the highest compliment he could give, right? And my brother turns and says, you know, when he grabbed my beard like that and brought me to his face so I get chills right now. His face completely transformed, and it was Jesus's face in front of me. And I was all impatient, talking about the business and orchids, politics, grabbing his beard, and a whole profound sense of teaching happened right there. Deep experiential. So it's the quality of the person, okay, and your devotion, your openness. If a teacher is not speaking from the reality of their own experience, what they say will not penetrate the students' hearts and have the necessary effect on their mind. Turn that around. If a teacher is speaking from the reality, if a teacher is speaking from the reality of their own experience, what they say will penetrate the students' hearts and have the necessary effect on their mind. That's what we're looking for. Buddha said, in later times, the monks, many without vows, wanting to call themselves learned, will sing the praises of ethical conduct without any interest in behaving ethically. That was Buddha's prediction. So in the traditional teachings, they talk about the Guru's kindness. And I wrote there, do not be fooled by appearances. So again, I'm giving a lot of warnings about that. But then when you have your relationship with the Guru, or it can be in general too, your faith and confidence in the Gurus. So they're considered much kinder than all the Buddhas in general. Okay? Think about that. So much kinder than all the Buddhas in general means that there are countless Buddhas over countless eons, and our own beginning has no beginning. So there's been opportunities to have a relationship with all the Buddhas, but yet they can't reach us. They can't reach us. They didn't save us. Okay? They didn't come and save us. And even Shakyamuni Buddha, our guru, is kinder than Shakyamuni Buddha, because Shakyamuni Buddha disappeared. He disappeared. I mean, of course, his kindness we can't compare, but we can't receive direct teachings and guidance from him, right? I mean, due to his power, he could still be here, but due to our karma, of course, he ceased to manifest. So the kindness that the Guru is specifically aligned with is in teaching the Dharma. Now, in teaching the Dharma, again, I really want to impress upon people that this also means experiential Dharma, not just the teachings of the Dharma. Okay? It's that magneticism that Lama Yeshe had with my parents and my brother. Okay, that was teaching Dharma, wasn't it? So it's not just the formal teachings, but it's the power to get you to experience, which is the fourth one, the kindness of blessing your mind stream. So number 3, the kindness to teaching the Dharma, clearly explain this. We have no idea how to get to New York if someone doesn't explain it. We have no idea how to get to awakening, develop bodhicitta, develop emptiness, or develop even understand perfect human rebirth, death and dying, impermanence, kindness of sentient beings. None of these, if someone doesn't tell us, and our best friend isn't telling us, right? Our best friends and our parents never told us any of this stuff. So that's the kindness, number 3. Number 4 is then blessing your mind stream as well. Okay, that magnetic connection, that psychic connection. And then the kindness in attracting you into his or her circle through giving you material gifts and other things like that. Okay. Now, what's our job? You know, Lam Yesh used to say, well, in developing a relationship with the guru and the disciple, then the guru at first gives material things to people to generate their confidence. And I think about like Lam Yeshi's relation, my mother and father, they weren't any kind of Dharma practice, they didn't study or anything. But immediately their attitude changed. They loved him. So that ripens my dad used to say, well, if I was going to be any religion, I'd be Buddhist. So it's that, going to that level. Can you imagine? So having that wisdom to know what communicates with which student when, that takes profound wisdom. That wisdom comes to the realization of emptiness and our bodhicitta. There was a young boy, and years ago, young boy in I think it was 9 or 10, who started developing schizophrenic tendencies, hearing voices, and of course his mother got very, very concerned. So she called Lama Yeshe was visiting Australia, and so Lama went to visit her. And he was talking with the boy and the mom and like that. I don't know, I don't exactly remember the conversation, but then at one point he asked the mom to get a bowl of steaming hot water, boiling water, whatever, hot water, and a towel, and asked her if she had some Vicks Vapor Rub, which she did. So he said, okay, bring these things here. And then he told her, I don't know if she had to leave the room or just be really quiet. He took the bowl and he put Vicks Vapor Rub in it. And they took the towel and he put it over his head and the boy's head. So they're under this little tent together. No one knows what Lama said or did there, but the boy never developed it. All the voices disappeared. Yeah, and he did not develop schizophrenia. Okay. I think it had nothing to do with the technique. I think it had everything to do that boy and mom had the great fortune of having a connection. I shouldn't say nothing to do with it. Those are the conditions, not the causes. The Vicks Vapor Rub and the hot boiling water, but the cause was a karmic connection with Lama. So that's how I see my parents. Now they have that, who knows when that will ripen, we don't know, hopefully quickly. Okay. So that's the kindness that we're talking about. Okay. So last thing is we need to practice. We can't just receive. When in your relationship with the guru, spiritual guide, our practice is to provide them with gifts, meaning if they need like Lama Zopa receives lots of offerings, and people sometimes might be critical of that, but that has nothing to do with Lama Zopa. It has everything to do with the student. The student, we need to be generous. We need to create merit. And the greatest object of merit, more than a stupa, more than a statue, is the guru. So from now, what's even better is I know directly Lama Zopa Rinpoche has no need for any of the money and doesn't keep it for himself at all anyway. Okay. But he is willing to be the object of you and me creating the merit that we need. So understand that. Now, if I know there were these what I thought of as not very wholesome monks living in Bodhanath in Nepal, and they were getting more and more Mercedes Benzes and nicer houses, and then you can't judge, but you have to judge a little bit. Maybe they were using it for others. I don't think so, from what I heard. Why did Rajneesh need 99 Rolls Royces? I don't know. Okay, been better. Find that his students developed devotion to him and made offerings. In my mind, and I'm just judging, so it could be wrong, probably wrong. You know, if he had sold the Rolls Royces and helped fund other things that were more directly helpful to people, then our practice with our responsibility is to show reverence or I don't like the word devotion. It's kind of, but anyway, reverence or respect to the teacher, just like traditionally a judge comes into the courtroom, everyone stands, they show sort of a reverence. Okay, this is my courtroom. You won't behave like that. Then we offer service. And in the context of our organization, there's a lot of this service is serving through the centers, providing teachings for others. But it can be other service too. But it does matter your motivation, of course. But service that pleases the guru, okay, pleasing, because all he or she wants is to enlighten living beings and develop us, help people develop their minds. And then ultimately the best offering we give and devotion we give to the guru is by offering to be practicing what they instruct as best we can. As best we can. We can't always do it, all of it. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our time together. Yeah, unless there's a question that anybody has? No? Okay.
So we walk up to somebody with our little notebook
Uh-huh.
that has all these requirements in them.
Yeah.
And we go, do you have all this?
Yeah. Well, as you're walking
Right?
up, as you walk up, you don't notice the hole in the road that then you step in and fall and break your ankle, right?
Right?
Figuratively, anyway. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. And so your point is, how do we do this, right? So two things I think of. One is going back to our very first class, where Buddha is the guru. Start with that. Okay. And second thing is it's difficult to read their minds, isn't it? Like the teacher. So we don't know if they have realization of emptiness. We don't know if they have meditative stabilization. We don't know if they have how their practice of ethics. Do they have great compassion? So I say, Denise, it's the hardest thing for us. I don't know if it's Americans, Westerners. It's the hardest thing for us to be like a little bit patient. So I think better to be doubtful. Start with doubt, but leaning towards belief, right? You remember, I think I've told the story of Malcolm X many times, that he had one unruly parishioner or doubting woman and always questioning him and from the front row and, giving him a hard time. And finally his disciples or his students said, you really should ask that lady to leave. Every Sunday she comes, she disrupts the service. And he said, no, no, no. The ones that doubt the most and become convinced are the ones that stay the longest. So we want to be doubting, but we want to be convinced. But just doubt, like skepticism for itself, is actually kind of negative, isn't it? It's just, yeah. So, I don't think, okay.
Discerning.
Discerning. I don't think that you're going to go buy a house or sell one of your clients a house that you're not going to.
I'm going to turn my camera off because my battery's dying.
Okay. So when
Sorry,
you go
ahead.
when you taking on a new property, right?
Yeah.
I bet you apply more discernment to that property than you do to a teacher. Maybe. I don't know, person. You know what I mean? So if we do it with our job or this kinds of, just ordinary affairs, you're going to take a new job, you're going to do a lot of due diligence. That's all we're talking about here. And then when you find that the teacher is qualified in certain areas, but you have some, like, you don't feel so much the this other area, then you accept that person for what they have to offer you in those areas. And also we have to be suspicious of our own views when we say, oh, he doesn't seem very nice, or it doesn't seem like a great teacher, he's kind of boring. Then we have to kind of look at ourselves. That's not
Yeah.
being a boring teacher, or, is not there's not, I mean, you have to communicate well, but we don't just judge on that one point of how they present themselves.
So do
That's
you,
why,
let's say that you say, I think I have a lot to learn from this person.
right.
What do you, like I asked somebody today, I said, I'm taking a class in, finding a guru or whatever, like this is how I worded it. And she goes,
Uh-huh.
you don't find your guru finds you.
Not true. True and not true. True and not true, right? If you don't,
It was interesting.
if you don't have a ring, how can the guru put a hook in you? Our job is to create the ring.
Okay.
And of course, I mean, it's not that the guru finds you. You have a karmic relation. You find each other.
Right.
Now, due to the unbelievable blessings and kindness of the Buddha manifesting to the guru can definitely steer you towards him or her. And that can take, you might have found that. I mean, I think that when I went, okay, so when, can I tell one more story and then we'll leave? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So when I was first in Nepal and I met Lama Yeshe, and then of course the deal was, I mean, I just was so convinced. And I was a undergraduate student, and I was there a year and a half. And I had to go back to the States for a year to finish my degree, and I really wanted to come back. And so I think there's two different angles to this story. So so he invited me to come to have breakfast with him on the monastery on the Golpa roof. And I came and I was so nervous, trying to eat this. And of course, those days, the food was terrible in Nepal. It was absolutely, and there I was up with him, and we had white bread, it was a big deal. And, we had white bread, and on the package, you say machine made, like that was a really great thing. This is 1977 in Nepal. And then he had a couple jars of jam and this Indian peanut butter and a couple hard-boiled eggs. I hadn't eaten like that for probably a year and a half. And so we were talking, visiting, and I was, like I said, very anxious, and hardly eating. And then he said to me, he said, so how'd you get the name Karuna? And I said to him, well, actually, Lama, I've been trying to drop that name because, I was involved in the Hindu tradition before. And when I was involved in that tradition, then my Indian guru gave me the name Karuna. And I said, but I had kind of a falling out with that whole tradition, I had falling out with him. And so I think I wanted to go back to my birth name, which is John. And he said, no, he went like that. He said, I think Karuna fits your nature. He says, anyway, I think that guru was Buddha. I can't say it was Buddha or not, I can say, but the point is that if I see that guru is Buddha, and by the way, I tried to visit that guru. He was very kind, by the way, this Indian guru. He just did some things that I couldn't make sense of. And so actually he was from Bangalore, and one point I went to Bangalore and I tried to look him up, and I went to his ashram and it was locked and closed. And I was like, I wonder. He says because of that guru, I met Lama Yeshe. Because that guru manifested some inappropriate behavior, I became Buddhist. Because I became Buddhist, I met Lama Yeshe. Because I had interest. I lost interest in Hinduism, so I had interest in Buddhism. You know, all that. You can't say, and that was 3-4 years before, and Lama says, I think that guru was Buddha, and then I think Lama Yeshe is Buddha, and I think Buddha's teaching me. It's all Buddha, right? If so due to my marriage, how would I have ever known that Hindu guru was Buddha? And led me to my great fortune and meeting Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Dalai Lama. So I don't know what, Denise, I think that's an answer to your question, but I'm not sure how. Okay. So thank you very much. We didn't get very far, and we did, right? Technically, I don't know if I did my job because I didn't give all the 10s of this and the 5s of that and the 4s of this and the so people want that. Well, we can always add those maybe at a later date. I'm not sure they're that important or not. Well, they are important, but someone can do that as well. Okay, so please remember that we've generated a great ton store of positive energy. The merit, just talking about, I'm serious now, this is serious, that I believe the merit is huge, maybe even, well, we can't say more than other topics, but without this one, difficult to progress. But with this one, the progression is extremely fast, can be fast. So please dedicate your mind and merit and thoughts and imprints that ourselves come under the guidance of the guru, a qualified, fully qualified spiritual guide, and that connection and that guidance does not lapse for even a year, that we're under that care and that practice for all the lifetimes we need until we generate the pure understanding of the path, and the path becomes our mind, and that all the gurus manifest for us directly as our spiritual friends with an indelible connection, that they all are able to manifest long lives full of with great health, that there's no manifestation due to our karma of aging, sickness, and death, that all only manifests as pure Dharma activity, and through the connection with our gurus, these gurus, we generate the full awakening bodhicitta mind, thinking of the welfare of others. I also tell students that when they would have a meeting or some time with Lama or Rinpoche, I would tell them that they need to visualize all countless beings, all the other students around them, because they don't have that luckiness to spend an hour or two with having a cup of tea or teaching or receiving teachings. So always think like dedicating your relationship with the guru is not just for you. That's just so small-minded. It's for the welfare of all the students and all sentient beings. So think like that for a moment. Okay. Thank you. Hang on. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here and helping present this recording in this class as well. So we will stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.